Check out some of the books from our Hot Summer Reads. First up, some highlights from spring. The Correspondent by Virginia Evans is sure to be one of my all-time favorites for 2025. Sybil is a prickly older woman who has some difficult relationships with friends and family. But what she does excel at is writing letters, and this whole novel is written as those letters. She writes to companies, celebrities, her brother, other family members, her favorite authors, and through those letters and the responses, we learn her whole backstory and what's going on in her life. Because just at a time when you'd think her life might be beginning to shrink a little bit, it expands with some possible new love interests. Another favorite of mine is The Lilac People by Milo Todd. This is historical fiction set in Germany before, during, and after World War II. It's a difficult read because it features people from the queer community in Berlin. Early on, Berlin is the center of queer culture. People from all over the world go to Berlin to celebrate that, but things turn bad during the Nazi regime. We do know that two of the main characters will survive. They escape Berlin and live out their lives during the war on a remote farm. This book will have you in tears, but it is such an important read and really tragically mirrors some trends in our time. Our first genre is historical fiction.
Our first title in historical fiction is The Phoenix Pencil Company by Allison King, a debut novel that blends historical fiction, magical realism, and family drama. We meet Monica, a college student who's developing a social networking software. It's designed to connect strangers online. Monica returns home from college. She needs to help care for her 90-year-old grandma, whose memory has begun to fade. Through the software she's developing, Monica uncovers a hidden family history tied to her grandmother Yoon's time at the Phoenix Pencil Company in Shanghai during World War II. Monica discovers women in the Wong family, particularly Yoon and her cousin Meng, possess the ability to reforge pencils, bringing back the memories of the written words. This involves physically pressing the pencil lead into the wrist and transferring the words and memories embedded within the pencil's graphite. But when the government uncovers their secret, they're forced into a life of espionage. This stunning debut asks, who owns and inherits our stories?
The Great Man by Kira Davis Laurie. This is a fascinating literary/historical fiction read in a similar vein to Percival Everett's book James. This title retells The Great Gatsby by focusing on the untold story of the Black elite living in West Adam Heights, LA. The author notes how she took inspiration from a small passage in the original Great Gatsby that mentions several wealthy Black characters. From that, she builds this story, bolstered by true news stories, around the successful and silently struggling Sugar Hill neighborhood of Los Angeles. This book follows Charlie, a young war vet, who leaves the South after a traumatic incident to find a place filled with new opportunities among his cousin Marguerite's wealthy and famous peers. It's here that Charlie runs across James Mann, whose lavish parties and opulent wealth have captured the masses, including the likes of the famous Hattie McDaniel and Lena Horne, amongst more. While Mann's parties are to gain attention, it's not from the masses, but rather from one woman who he seeks to woo once again. I think this was a well-done spin on a classic. Kira Davis Laurie even writes with a lyrical and poignant style that will have readers harkening back to Gatsby's lavish parties and his love for Daisy. This modern take provides more grit under the surface of luxury, touching on Black identity in post-war America, racial covenants and lawsuits, while still maintaining the overarching narrative of wealth and power. According to Library Journal, Laurie is a writer to watch. This would make a great book club read. I highly recommend.
Maggie Stiefvater is mainly known as a young adult author for books like The Raven Boys. This is her adult debut. It's historical fiction set during World War II, but unlike most of the other World War II historical fiction, this one's set in West Virginia. The Avalon Spa is a luxury hotel in the wild areas of West Virginia, and it's been a getaway for very wealthy and elite people. But now, during the war, it's been taken over by the FBI as a place to hold captured Axis diplomats. The general manager, June, must persuade her staff to take care of these guests as if they were the same guests as before the war. But a lot of these employees, they have husbands, sons, brothers, family, and friends going off to fight the Nazis, and they have to stay here and wait on these people in the hotel. There's also a lot of FBI presence in the hotel because they want to know if these diplomats are still corresponding with people in Germany, Italy, and wherever. So there's a hint of romance, a lot of history, and even a touch of magical realism involving the water underground, part sparkling up through the spa at the Avalon Hotel.
Taylor Jenkins Reid is back with her first book in 3 years, Atmosphere, a Love Story. Even before it was published, we found out this one will be turned into a movie. It's historical fiction set in the 1980s, focusing on the first women in the NASA Space Shuttle program. The story follows Joan Goodwin, a physics and astronomy professor whose ambition is to become an astronaut. We follow her training alongside other exceptional candidates as she faces challenges in this male-dominated field. It also includes a relationship with a fellow trainee. But in December 1984, one mission changes in an instant, and Joan is forced to use the skills and knowledge she's obtained to ensure the safety of her crew, including the person she loves. Fast-paced, thrilling, and emotional, Atmosphere is Taylor Jenkins Reid at her best, transporting readers to iconic times and places. The Lies They Told is the latest from Ellen Marie Wiseman. Lena Conti is a young, unwed mother. She sees immigrant families being forcibly separated on Ellis Island when she arrives in the early 1930s. You see, she's determined to give her daughter a better life after years of poverty. Enter Silas Wolfe, a family relative who is a widow, and he begrudgingly brings Lena and her daughter to his cabin in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains to care for his home and children. The children in her care have been taught to hide when the sheriff comes around. You see, the state wants to paint them as backwards so they can deal with those who possess inferior genes. After a social worker from the eugenics office accuses Lena herself of promiscuity and feeble-mindedness, she is sent away to the Virginia State Colony for the feeble-minded and epileptics. Lena faces impossible choices in hopes of reuniting with her daughter, protecting the people and the land she has grown to love. This one will be book club gold.
Throughout our presentation, we'll have nonfiction interludes from Christine and Julie.
Marcia, The Joy and Defiance of Marcia P. Johnson by Tourmaline. Marcia is the first full-length biography capturing all facets of her vibrant, challenging journey. Written by the acclaimed artist and activist Tourmaline, this biography goes beyond legend to reveal her humanity. Drag performances with the Hot Peaches, activism during AIDS, and advocacy for gender-affirming care. Tourmaline weaves together first-person interviews, archival materials, and her own lived connection to Marcia. Published in May 2025, Marcia shines amid today's ongoing fights for trans healthcare and racial justice. Tourmaline draws clear through lines. Marcia's fight for gender-affirming care echoes deeply with current activism. In sum, Marcia is more than a biography. It's a vibrant portrait of defiance, care, art, and unapologetic self-expression. Tourmaline captures both joy and rage, tragedy and transcendence. The Sisterhood of Ravensbrück by Lynn Olson. Author Lynn Olson takes us to an all-female Nazi concentration camp, Ravensbrück, where a courageous group of mostly French resistance women banded together under unimaginable brutality. Olson's new book shines a spotlight on their deep bonds, acts of sabotage, artistic resistance, and moral steadfastness. It's both harrowing and profoundly human. Olson divides the story into epics: pre-war lives and resistance, wartime leadership in the camp, and post-liberation activism. Olson doesn't shy away from Ravensbrück's brutal realities, but she also captures uplifting moments: camp theater, secret teaching, and post-war campaigning. The narrative is both sober and uplifting. The Sisterhood of Ravensbrück is a powerful testament to female courage, resistance, and moral clarity.
And now for some speculative fiction.
The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia. A horror read filled with danger and witchcraft, The Bewitching is the newest title from the author of Mexican Gothic. Readers are introduced to Minerva, a grad student studying horror literature and the life of an obscure author, Beatrice Tremblay. Some of Minerva's fascination with horror likely came from her great-grandmother, Nana Alba, who always told her stories, starting with the line, "Back then, when I was a young woman, there were still witches." Minerva's research into horror stories leads her to the true story behind them, including a mysterious disappearance at the same university where she is now, as well as taking her back to the tales of her Nana Alba in 1900s Mexico. Now the woes of these past women might be coming for Minerva now, too. For those that miss dark academia feels, this has a great dark Gothic atmosphere set on a college campus, while bringing in some horror and fantasy for good measure. I loved that this book includes the dark academia feel when the students leave school for the summer. It's perfect for readers wanting a little fall/Halloween in these warm summer months. Fans of Moreno Garcia will also be fans of this new one. And also wanted to mention that there is even a Spotify playlist that was put out by the publisher for this one. So if you want to get the feel of the book or listen to it while you read, be sure to check that out.
Six Wild Crowns by Holly Race is fantasy based on Henry VIII and his famous 6 wives. So if you're a fan of Tudor history, bring that passion, but throw away a lot of your factual knowledge because remember, this is fantasy. In the kingdom of Elben, Henry needs 6 wives because only when the 6 castles around the edge of his kingdom are occupied with queens will the land be safe. This is described as epic fantasy filled with dragons, court politics, and sapphic yearning. What a delightful way to view Henry and his more powerful wives in this book.
A new fantasy horror read with plenty of queer representation and vampires from V.E. Schwab. For fans of Schwab's atmospheric fantasy reads like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, this book possesses a similarly lyrical writing style, though the tone of this one is much darker. This story follows 3 women, a young girl in 1532 Spain who decides to no longer be a pawn in the games of men when a stranger offers her another path, a young woman in 1827 England who is sent to London from her family estate after a forbidden passion changes her path, and a college woman in 2019 Boston whose life experiences help her to uncover her rage. This book is definitely dark, twisty, with some toxic yet addicting characters. Beautifully written, this poetic and dark read is sure to be a win for Schwab fans who want something a little more steamy and sinister.
Some more nonfiction.
Monopoly X is the code name for a top-secret World War II operation. Select British and American intelligence services used customized Monopoly game boards and had them delivered to captured Allied servicemen held at gunpoint behind barbed wire in German prison camps. But these weren't your ordinary game boards. These Monopoly boards were modified to hide tools like lockpicks, tiny saws, compasses, maps, and fake ID papers. The games were then smuggled into the prisoner of war camps through fictitious charities, making them seem innocuous. Not even the games manufacturer Parker Brothers found out until the 1980s. You see, this allowed for successful Allied and prisoner of war escapes, breakouts, and aided in espionage activities. The author is the world expert on Monopoly. Phil Orbanes is a game maker, worked for decades at Parker Brothers, and has written all the important books on Monopoly. He knows more about the game than anyone else.
How to Lose Your Mother by Molly Jong Fast. Imagine growing up in the shadow of your mother, Erica Jong, author of Fear of Flying, the then controversial novel written in 1973. Now imagine trying to find your own voice in the middle of all that literary firepower, feminism, and dysfunction. That's the sharp, hilarious, and emotionally honest terrain Molly Jong Fast explores in her new memoir, How to Lose Your Mother. Jong Fast takes us through her chaotic upbringing in Manhattan's Upper West Side literary elite, where the lines between parenting and partying were often blurred, and love, while present, didn't always come in comforting forms. Addiction, recovery, motherhood, fame, and forgiveness all swirl through this memoir. But what keeps it buoyant is Jong Fast's voice, witty, self-deprecating, and deeply observant. How to Lose Your Mother is a portrait of a woman coming to terms with the messy people who raised her and the messy person she once was. It's for anyone who's had a complicated relationship with a parent, and who hasn't, and for readers who love memoirs that are both unflinching and unexpectedly funny.
The always popular genres of mysteries and thrillers.
It's been 10 years since we met Lo Blacklock in The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. Now she's back, The Woman in Suite 11. Lo Blacklock, the journalist, has been invited to the opening of a luxury Swiss hotel. And boy, she is excited because she's been out of the game for years, having children, and then the pandemic hit. She's hoping to land an interview with the reclusive billionaire owner, but quickly becomes entangled in a dangerous situation when she receives a late-night phone call from a woman warning Lo her life is in danger. Suddenly, she's been pulled into a chase across Europe, and Lo begins to question who she can trust and the lengths that she would go to save someone. This novel explores themes of luxury, deception, and danger. Fun fact, Keira Knightley will be starring in the Netflix adaptation of The Woman in Cabin 10 this fall.
What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown is a thriller, a family drama, and an exploration of the role of tech in our lives. Jane is a young girl who lives in a cabin in Montana, off-grid with her father, being homeschooled and doing subsistence farming. Occasionally her father goes into town to get basic supplies or do some odd jobs for money. He never allows Jane to go with him. She's been told that her mother died in a car accident. One time, her father decides to let her come into town now that she's a teenager, and he says he's going to need her to distract a security guard. Now, why does he need to do that? Suddenly, there's an explosion. I'm telling too much of this story.
A new cozy mystery with some romance that takes readers to a tiny hamlet in England where a town rallies together to raise money for the town by hosting a fake murder mystery. Having recently lost her absentee mother, 34-year-old Kath discovers a mysterious last-minute purchase of her mother's. Tickets to a murder mystery simulation in a town Kath has never heard of in England's Peak District. And apparently the tickets were meant as an opportunity for a mother-daughter trip, which Kath finds hard to believe. In an attempt to boost tourism, the whole town gets behind this staged murder plot, and Kath seeks to unravel the mystery both set forth by the town and by her mom's odd trip purchase. Kath teams up with other solo participants, Amity, a recently divorced romance writer, and Wyatt, a 40-year-old who works at his husband's birding store and was gifted this trip. In the process of solving the town's crime, Kath and her roommates also seek to solve the mystery of her mother. A fun twist on a classic murder mystery, this story shows how a fake murder can actually lead to a new lease on life. Like the best cozy mysteries, this book is filled with a great cast of characters, funny, lovable, and quirky in their own ways. This would make for a fabulous book-to-screen adaptation between the entertaining full cast and the whimsical English setting. Witty, heartfelt, and certainly cozy. There is very minimal death in this one. And that is Welcome to Murder Week.
The Ghostwriter is the latest thriller and mystery by author Julie Clark. This story follows Olivia Dumont, a ghostwriter who conceals the fact that her estranged father is the famous horror author Vincent Taylor. You'll note their different last name. This is because Vincent is also the prime suspect in the unsolved murder of his teenage siblings from 1975. Vincent just can't shake the whispers and the accusations that he was the one that killed them. When Olivia faces incredible financial struggles, she reluctantly accepts a job to ghostwrite her father's final book. What she doesn't know, though, is that this project isn't another horror novel. It is actually another one of his lies. Because this time, this book is a memoir about what happened that fateful night in 1975. After 50 years of silence, Vincent Taylor is finally ready to talk about what happened. This forces Olivia to confront long-buried family secrets and the ghosts that still haunt them. There are themes about unreliable memories, the search for truth, family secrets, and the burden of the past in The Ghostwriter.
Not Quite Dead Yet is a thriller coming July 22nd. The author, Holly Jackson, is another young adult author making an adult debut. She's known for A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. In this book, I have a 27-year-old Jet who's viciously attacked and left with a major head injury. When she wakes up in the hospital, her very sad-looking family and doctors are gathered around her bed to tell her the horrible news that she has such a bad head injury, and because of her pre-existing condition, she will develop an aneurysm that will burst in her brain, and she will be dead within 7 days. Jet is pretty annoyed at this and decides she's going to solve the case. Right now, the police are somewhat looking for her assailant, but soon it will be her murderer. So she has 7 days to solve her own murder. She has nothing to lose, nothing to be afraid of, and so she'll break any laws or do whatever she can to find out who killed her.
King of Ashes is the latest gripping Southern crime epic by S.A. Cosby. It's been called Godfather-inspired, a story of family dynamics within a criminal underworld. We meet Roman Carruthers, a successful financial whiz living in Atlanta. He's forced to return home to Jefferson Run, Virginia, after his father is involved in a suspicious car accident and falls into a coma. You see, his younger brother Dante is deeply in debt to some dangerous criminals. His sister Nevaeh is just struggling to keep their family's business afloat, Carruthers Crematorium. And she's working to uncover the truth about what happened in her father's accident and why their mother disappeared years ago. Roman offers his skills and resources to save his family from the criminals, but finds himself drawn into the violent underworld and must make unimaginable choices. As Roman fights for his family, Nevaeh investigates the mysteries surrounding their mother's disappearance. Everything burns is the phrase that runs throughout this book, and it's a haunting reminder of the destructive nature of Roman's actions and the potential for everything he cares about to be consumed by his choices. Very exciting. Arapahoe Libraries will be bringing S.A. Cosby in person on September 18th. Check our website as signups will begin August 1st.
Do you like books with an unlikable heroine that you still are really pulling for? Then this is for you. Her Many Faces by Nikki Cloak comes out in July. 4 wealthy men are having a dinner at a private exclusive club in London. After dinner, they're served brandy, and minutes later, they all die of cyanide poisoning. The only other person in the room with them was a young waitress. Hers are the only fingerprints on the bottle of brandy. And minutes after serving them the brandy, she's seen on the cameras outside the club, leaving the building with a smile on her face. Hours later, when she's found at a train station leaving London, all she has to say is, "They deserved it." The rest of the book is told from the viewpoint of many other of the men in her life. Her father, a former friend, former lover, a journalist covering the case, and her lawyer. You may not love Catherine, but does that mean she did this? Clearly, the police think it's an open and shut case, but that wouldn't make for much of a thriller now, would it?
More nonfiction.
Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Ron Chernow's new biography, released May 13, 2025, delivers an expansive 1,200-page portrait of Samuel Clemens, known worldwide as Mark Twain, written by the Pulitzer Prize-winning author of Alexander Hamilton and Grant. Chernow doesn't just recount Twain's career as humorist, steamboat pilot, journalist, and author of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. Chernow looks at Twain's moral and cultural complexity. As a product of a slave-holding upbringing, Twain became a forceful critic of slavery, though he controversially remained silent on lynching. Chernow also doesn't shy away from other darker aspects. Twain's grief over the loss of 3 daughters, and a late-in-life infatuation with young girls, his so-called angelfish. Chernow's Mark Twain is a sweeping and candid exploration of an iconic American figure, the lighthearted humorist, the tragic father, the celebrity, and cultural critic. A Flower Traveled in My Blood by Haley Cohen Gilliland. In A Flower Traveled in My Blood, Haley Cohen Gilliland brings to light the hidden stories of Argentina's disappeared and the extraordinary courage of a group known as the Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, grandmothers who refused to remain silent when their grandchildren were stolen by a military dictatorship. In 1976, Argentina's military junta kidnapped thousands labeled as subversives. Some were pregnant, and they gave birth in captivity before being disappeared, while their babies were clandestinely given to families tied to the regime. Gilliland blends meticulous archival research with storytelling. This book is powerful, reflective, and sobering. It's not just history. It raises profound questions. What does family truly mean? How do we reconcile justice with compassion? And how far will ordinary people go to restore truth? A Flower Traveled in My Blood is a testament to memory and resistance. It invites us to witness how love, science, and perseverance confronted a brutal regime, and how these grandmothers changed the course of history. Whack Job, A History of Axe Murder by Rachel McCarthy James. Whack Job by Rachel McCarthy James takes the iconic axe murderer image and turns it into something far more fascinating and disturbing. This isn't your average true crime read. It's an often darkly funny deep dive into how a basic survival tool, the axe, has evolved over time into one of the most fearsome weapons in the human imagination. What makes this a great book club pick is how Whack Job isn't just about the murders themselves. It's about why these stories stick with us, how we turn tools into symbols and murderers into legends. McCarthy James brings a journalist's research and a cultural critic's eye to the table, and she doesn't shy away from humor or horror. James asks thoughtful questions. What does it mean when we turn tools into icons of fear? How do race, gender, and power play into the way axe murders are remembered or forgotten? And why are we so fascinated by this kind of violence? If you enjoy books that dig beneath the surface of true crime, if you're interested in how ordinary objects carry extraordinary meaning, Whack Job is a standout. It's smart, insightful, and yes, occasionally macabre, but always with a purpose.
Julie's here with some romance for us.
The Love Haters by Catherine Senner. For a great rom-com read, check out Catherine Senner's newest title. This one follows video producer Katie as she heads to Key West to profile a famous Coast Guard rescue swimmer, Hutch. But between his family drama, her accumulating lies, and their growing attraction, Katie must confront her fears and find some courage while in paradise. There are all kinds of storms to be weathered in this read, both real and metaphorical. This one touches a lot on body image and working through those struggles, as well as working through past conflicts with family. This was an enjoyable and fast-paced read and a pretty tame romance read for those who don't want as much of the spice. Sounds Like Love follows hit-making songwriter Joni as she makes her way in LA, while also fighting against a growing emptiness inside herself as she tries to craft new music. She decides to venture home to North Carolina to her family and their family-owned concert venue, The Revelry, to try to catch the musical spark she seemed to have lost. Yet Joni soon witnesses firsthand how when you move away from home, time doesn't stop, as she's forced to catch up with all that life has thrown at her family and friends since she's been away. And yet there's always a little bit of magic in the places we call home. While there, a melody begins playing in Joni's head, followed by a voice, and she realizes that the voice is of musician Sebastian, who she may or may not have previously kissed, and it's playing like an earworm in her head. Cue Ashley Poston's classic magical realism woven throughout her sweet romantic stories. For fans of Poston, you may know how there is magic involved in her book 7 Year Slip and Dead Romantics as well. Now, Sebastian and Joni need to come together to craft the melody in their heads into a song destined to be heard, because maybe there is a reason this song needs to see the light of day and needs to be shared by this pair in particular. This romance has a little bit of everything you want in a rom-com. The characters are flawed and yet filled with kindness and hope. The plot, while still including the classic predictability of a romance, includes deeper themes such as loss, navigating the long goodbye of dementia, and how to forgive past selves for all the futures one does not become. This book does a great job crafting characters you care about and straddling the tension of wanting to move away from home to pursue big dreams with the grief of leaving. You could say that this book hit all the right notes. I loved this one. Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. This is the third in the Kennedy Ryan Skyland series. Each book focuses on a different protagonist, so while you can read these as standalone titles, it's recommended to read them all. This title focuses on Hendrix, who is living her best life with great friends, family, and a thriving career. Her job puts her into the excitement and drama of the entertainment industry, where she meets tech mogul Maverick at the summer's hottest party. Hendrix falls hard for him, except she can't have him if she wants to stay the course she's set for herself. Ryan's books are steamy, heartfelt, and thoughtful. Check out all the titles in this series. Gabriella and His Grace. In a similar vein to Kennedy, this book is a part of a series about the Luna sisters, but can be read as a standalone title. This book focuses on a scandalous arrangement between a mischievous heiress and a destitute duke. As Gabby boards a ship to flee the British suitors she's expected to marry, and Sebastian sets sail to regain his family's dwindling wealth, the pair plans to help each other escape the pressures placed on them. But will the romance that blooms between them help or hinder their plans? This is a Regency-era romance perfect for any Bridgerton fans or fans of the time period of the early 1800s. More nonfiction.
Murderland by Caroline Fraser. The Pacific Northwest of the 70s and 80s is a landscape not only green and rainy, but also scarred by industrial smelting towers spewing lead and arsenic. In Murderland, Pulitzer-winning historian Caroline Fraser explores a chilling hypothesis. Environmental toxins helped cultivate a serial killer epidemic in places like Tacoma and Seattle. She masterfully weaves together the lives of infamous killers, Ted Bundy, Gary Ridgway, Richard Ramirez, and Dennis Rader, and the story of Asarco smelters dumping heavy metals into their communities. She then introduces her own childhood memories growing up near these deadly landscapes, blending memoir with true crime and environmental exposé. The book transcends true crime obsession. It's a cultural autopsy. It prompts critical reflection on how we build, pollute, and ignore. Murderland isn't just a chronicle of murder, it's a warning. Misbehaving at the Crossroads by Honorée Fannon Jeffers. In Misbehaving at the Crossroads, National Book Award finalist Honorée Fannon Jeffers invites us into an intimate, soul-searching, and razor-sharp poetic landscape that's as unflinching as it is lyrical. This collection is both a reckoning and a love letter. Jeffers explores what it means to be a Black woman in contemporary America, not just surviving, but claiming joy, power, and the right to misbehave in spaces that have long tried to dictate decorum, silence, and invisibility. In these poems and essays, Jeffers confronts history, the violence and erasure, but also the intimate, the sensual, and the sacred. She weaves personal and ancestral memory with commentary on today's social and political terrain. One moment you're hearing her grandmother's voice, passed down like a hymn. The next you're pulled into a present that feels like protest and prayer all at once. Misbehaving at the Crossroads is not a quiet book. It's a bold, genre-straddling collection that dares to ask, what does it mean to misbehave with purpose, with integrity, and with art? This is for readers who want poetry that's rich in intellect and soul. Jeffers reminds us that the personal is always political and that poetry can be both balm and battle cry.
Now some literary and contemporary fiction.
Home of the American Circus follows 30-year-old Freya as she is forced to return home to claim the dilapidated house her parents left to her after their passing. The problem is, the house and her entire hometown stir up difficult memories and emotions for Freya, especially as she seeks to make amends with her niece Aubrey, who felt abandoned when Freya left town. Now Freya must figure out how to reconcile the past in order to move forward. This book explores broken families and dives into abuse, addictions, abandonment, and deception, but it also will win readers over with its heartfelt cast of characters who continually fight for one another and who embody the home is where the heart is mentality. This is definitely a story of found family. This was beautifully written, and I highly recommend it for fans of character-driven stories where the characters are both flawed and incredibly sincere. A fun fact, the title comes from the fact that the book is set in the birthplace of the American Circus in Somers, New York, where the author is also from.
The Names by Florence Knapp is sure to be a big hit with book clubs and will be one of my favorites of the year. Cora is a young mother in London, and a week after giving birth to her son, she goes to the registry office to register his name. What's she going to name him? Her husband, an obnoxious man, assumes he will be Gordon III. Her young daughter thinks he should be named Bear, and Cora's preference is for Julian. We don't know what name she chose because then the book splits into 3 different stories depending on what name she chose. It sounds confusing, but the author really makes this work. I think you're going to love The Names by Florence Knapp.
Far and Away by Amy Pople. In a similar vein to the movie The Holiday, this story follows 2 women as they swap homes, this one in Dallas and Berlin, as things go hilariously wrong. Lucy is desperate to escape Dallas after her son makes an irreversible mistake that has them all wanting to skip town. Greta finds herself signing up to house swap her beloved flat in Berlin while tipsy and distraught following her husband Otto's decision to take a dream job in Texas without discussing it with her first. These women have rushed into this house swap and find themselves not just moving into each other's homes, but into each other's lives. Filled with jet lag, family drama, career moves, culture shock, and scandals, this story will follow Greta and Lucy as they decide whether they can ever go home or if it's better to stay lost abroad. Read this story as the perfect summer escape with plenty of humor, heart, and a good dose of wanderlust. A great uplit or uplifting read.
Coming out in September is the latest from Elin Hilderbrand. She co-wrote this book with her daughter, Shelby Cunningham. We follow a cast of characters over the course of one drama-filled year at a New England boarding school. It's move-in day at Tiffin Academy, and friends are reuniting, taking selfies and unloading cars. Shocking news arrives. America Today ranked Tiffin the #2 boarding school in the country. That's a 17-spot jump. Is there a typo? The year continues to unfold with shocking news, scandals, and secrets. They come to light through a new phone app called ZipZap, and it reveals anonymous blind items about both students and staff. Think Gossip Girl on the campus of a boarding school. This book was inspired by reality because the Academy is based on a boarding school in Rhode Island that Shelby Cunningham herself attended. It's a page-turning, juicy, drama-filled story and a thrilling new direction from one of America's most popular storytellers. The Academy is the first book in an upcoming series, and I will definitely be tuning in for the next installment.